So one thing that came up is like, what is my passion? And my passion really is kind of multidimensional, but it points to the same thing. My passion is really to wake people up to who they really are, help them to find that, but then really help them to live that. Because it's one thing to have an experience of something beyond the mind, something beyond all the ideas that you have about yourself, but it's a completely another thing to say, okay, how am I going to live that in my everyday life? And there's a lot of people that come to retreats. There's a lot of people that can have spontaneous spiritual experiences where it's, like the doors of perception open and they realize, oh my God, all the problems I thought I had, everything I thought was wrong with me, all of a sudden it disappears. And I'm just in this place of complete awe and wonder and not really knowing who I am or what's going on, but feeling more at home than you can possibly ever feel. And so my passion is really helping people either to wake up to that or to say, okay, now how are you going to live it? So sometimes when people come to me or to us, they've already had these experiences of the doors of perception opening, but they're very frustrated because their lives don't change. Everything seems to stay the same. Their relationships don't get any better. They actually sometimes can become more frustrated and more cynical because they've already seen something beyond what they could ever imagine, and yet they can't access it again. So it's really about how am I going to be myself, my true self. And everybody has kind of this intuition inside of them that there's got to be more to life than what I'm already living. It's kind of like, I don't know what it is, but I know there's something more. And it's that something more that drives us to start seeking for something that's more. But what happens sometimes is people will find that something more when the doors of perception open. But because it's usually attached to a particular experience of how they feel in that moment, maybe their heart opens, maybe their brains are blown, whatever it happens to be. And then that emotional experience will subside. And then they think they've lost it. And then people will go and they'll continue to seek. Not seeking for any kind of understanding, but seeking for that emotional experience that they had. And the problem is if they're constantly seeking for something outside of themselves, they're never going to find what they found when the doors of perception opened. Because when the doors of perception opened, they realized their true nature. And their true nature of being that which is prior to or before anything that we think, anything that we feel, anything that we identify ourselves with. And so unfortunately what happens with a lot of people is they get very attached to the emotional experience and they don't have much understanding of what actually happened in a particular experience. So what I'm passionate about and what we do here is we help people to drop deeper into themselves so that they let go of who they think they already are, who they think they should be, all of the ideas they have about themselves, all the ideas they have about everybody else, and everything falls away. But then when everything falls away, that's the moment that we really come in and we start to help. Because that's where people really have to understand that what they're experiencing is not just an experience. It's not just a momentary state that they happen to be tapping into. It's the reverse. What they're actually finding and what they're tapping into is reality itself, is their true self, is consciousness itself as themselves. And that is always already the case. Most of the time, though, we turn away and we think we're all of these ideas that we have about ourselves. And then we think we have to have some experience to come back to find out, well, who am I? Or do a bunch of stuff, transcend a bunch of stuff in order for us to actually be free. But that moment that the doors of perception open, you recognize that you never did have a problem. You have never not been free. So it's the reverse, because it's not a case of what you see when you go beyond your ideas is a momentary experience. What's actually true is you're seeing what's true and available to you as yourself all the time when you're willing to take your attention, might be kind of harsh, off of your narcissistic relationship to what you think is your life. So most people think who they are is my name, where I'm from, what I do, who I'm married to, how much money I have, what I look like, my children, all sorts of ideas. This is who I am. But it's such a small definition of who somebody is, when actually they're much more than that, and it includes their history. So it's not a case of we want to deny anything about a human being being an individual. But that is such a small piece of the whole story. Because each individual actually is that which is beyond what we already think and what we already feel. It's consciousness itself. It's the energy and the light that's animating everything in this world. It's animating everything you can see, everything you can feel, everything you can hear, everything. It's animating this body. It's animating everybody's bodies who's watching this. Is anybody actually breathing themselves right now? Is anybody breathing and saying, okay, now I'm going to breathe and now I'm not going to breathe? Or is just breathing actually occurring? And who is being breathed? Are you breathing yourself, or are you being breathed? So just think about it. You can think about it for a moment. You can go, wow, something else is really going on here. Is the consciousness that's animating me the same consciousness that's animating you? Or do you have your special own personal consciousness, and I have my special own personal consciousness? Your consciousness is confined to your body. My consciousness is confined to my body. Are we separate, with my consciousness and your consciousness being separate? Or is there really only one consciousness that's animating that body, that's animating this body, that's animating the wind that's blowing between us right now? It's animating the sun that's shining the light. Isn't it all consciousness? So where is the separation? You have to ask yourself, where is the separation? But if we're only identified with this body as being who I am, then we are going to believe that anything outside of the boundaries of my own skin is separate from me. So that would imply that anything beyond me, like you, for example, is separate. And as soon as I impose any kind of separation, then all of a sudden I have something to do, I have something to prove, I have something to protect. And what do I have to prove and protect? I have to prove it to you, I have to protect from you. And that's where we end up with a lot of conflict. But what if we actually realized that the deepest dimension of ourself is the same? Your consciousness and my consciousness, it's one consciousness. We both have a habit of thinking that that's not true. So we both have a same egoic habit. And ego is basically, in our definition, because there's a lot of different definitions of ego, our definition is very specific. It's the insistence that separation is real, and it's the insistence that that limitation is real. Okay, so what we say is that there is never any time that we are separate, and there's never any time that we are limited. Now, it's not because I just say that. It's not like my opinion. So anybody that's ever gone beyond their mind, let's go back to the experiences we were just talking about. When you let go for even a brief second, and the doors of perception open, and you and all your problems and all your ideas disappear, you might even have the experience that you literally, you disappear. And there's nothing but everything, and there's nothing, everything is empty and everything is full, all at the same time. So if that was your experience, if you've had that experience, that is your reference point of what's true and what's real. Okay? So if you take an understanding of who I am is beyond anything I could have imagined, anything I could understand. It's a mystery that we know with our hearts, but we necessarily don't know it with our minds, but we know it with our being. And then you start looking at your life and you can see, oh my God, I'm living a life where I'm completely convinced that I'm isolated, alone, I'm separate, I'm limited. There's a little voice inside of everybody's head that's going, no, 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 you're not good enough, no value, you're stupid, whatever it happens to be. And all you have to look is, when you start to reach out, to think about doing something beyond your comfort zone, beyond what you normally would do, some passion arises within you, and you're just like, wow, I really want to do that. Then very, very quickly after that, usually you'll hear a little voice inside your head that'll say, oh, no, 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 or you'll feel some fear. So what we're saying is that that little voice and that fear that arises is basically just an egoic habit. It's a conditioned habit to maintain the illusion of separation and the illusion of limitation. Because we have been convinced that that's true our whole lives. We live in a society that's convinced they are separate and alone and isolated, and it's you against me. That's the society we live in, but more and more people are waking up. More and more people are understanding that, no, I'm more than that stupid voice that keeps telling me that I'm not good enough. I'm more than that stupid voice that, is telling me that I shouldn't try something new. So what my passion really is to really help to deconstruct this stupid little voice that everybody believes themselves to be, because it's just not true. And this stupid little voice, which we can call ego, is the root of all suffering for the individual and for this world. And if you think about it, the individual suffers because inside every single person, maybe it's deeper in other people than others, but there's an intuition and there's a knowing that I am not what I think and not what I feel. I'm more than that. And there's also a pain and a longing to be oneself. And that pain and that longing will be intense enough for some people that they start to look. And that's where the spiritual path starts. There's other people that maybe that intense pain and that longing isn't quite intense enough. And so they don't start looking. But once you start looking for that, then you can also understand that longing inside of us that are awake to it, that longing is the same in me as it is in you. It's consciousness itself pushing through and going, hello, 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 wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up to who you really are. And if you follow that longing, you see you will find your way. And you will end up having an experience of the doors of perception opening. And you will be able to see what's true. You will be able to find out what that more is that's kind of coming into you.
So I wanted to ask you, if I'm living a city life, I have my job, my car, the things that you were referring to before, and for some reason I have this moment of doors of perception that are open to me and I see something new in my life. What advice would you have to give me to be continuing this, or not to just believe this was just something and
it was just a passing experience? Yeah. Well, I think you know, if someone does have an experience and maybe it's spontaneous, maybe it's in nature or whatever, you do need to go out and try to find like-minded people who are going to help you to understand what you actually experienced, because it's not the experience the experience is important, but the interpretation you have on that experience is incredibly important. Because you can have an experience and you can think it's just an experience. But if you really go into it and you reach out to other people who maybe know more than you do about this, maybe you start reading books, then you can actually start to understand your experience. Because it's one thing to have it, it's another thing to understand it, and it's another thing to transcend that which is in the way. So it's a process. So when you understand something, that's only the beginning. Or when you see something, that's only the beginning. You need to understand your experience, and then you need to be able to transcend the experience. And one very good way for people to really go deeper into themselves. If they're in the city, it doesn't matter where you are. But we do a lot of meditation here. And it's a meditation practice that's very regular because it gives you a moment to be able to sit down and do nothing. Open yourself up, rest, and be able to go deeper in yourself. But also what's really important in meditation is you're able to see the movement of your mind from a little bit more distance than when you think you are the movement of the mind. So most people think they are what they think. So when you're meditating, one of two things will happen. A person might let go very, very quickly, and they have all the space just opens up, and they're completely in bliss. It's not what happens to most people. Most people will sit there and meditate on their thoughts, and it will drive them crazy. You'll sit there and you go, oh my God, I have so many thoughts, this is good. This is like torture. But eventually, if you do a particular practice, we have a very simple practice here, eventually you'll get sick of it enough that you'll bring your attention away from that movement of mind and that identification with mind. You'll start to recognize, oh, I'm not the thoughts. I am actually aware of the thinking process that's arising in my awareness in this moment. So, a very simple definition of ego is it's the personalization of thought and feeling. So it's very, very simple. A thought arises, and you think it means something about you, and you personalize it, and then you make it part of your story, and then it becomes an identity. And once you have a story and identity, you usually have a problem. And you have a problem that's special to you, and you have a problem that you need to get over. And then when you get over that problem, you think that you're going to be free. Okay, but then what happens is another problem happens. So another problem arises. So let's say that you have a thought that arises, and let's say that it's a racist thought. Now, most people don't want to be identified as being a racist. So what will happen? This is a good example. A racist thought arises, you personalize it, and you go, oh my God, I've had a racist thought. I'm a horrible person. I am now a horrible person. I can't let anybody know I had a racist thought because I feel so much shame. I'm so embarrassed. People are going to think I'm horrible if I do this. So a thought arises, a racist thought. You personalize it, you create an identity around it because you think now I am a racist. Then you have something to protect, then you have a problem to get over. And then it's something I have to keep within me because I'm ashamed. I have to keep it from you. I have to prove to you I'm not a racist, really, I'm not a racist, even though I had a racist thought. Okay, so then we have a whole story that's going on in here, and we have all these things that we're ashamed of. We have all these things we're afraid other people are going to find out about. And we spend all our time doing that. We find ourselves hiding from other people. We try to hide from our own thoughts. We try to run away from our own, experience. And it all is based on that moment that you personalize the arising of a thought in your experience. And it's very interesting when you think about it. So anybody can do this. I'm saying a lot of stuff and you might think, wow, this is really complex. But it's really not. Just look and think about how many times you're making a problem out of something. Just look, and if you take like the next 24 hours of your life and you look, and how many times are you making a problem? You're making a problem almost all the time. There's a problem because your husband's not doing what you want him to do. There's a problem because your kids are doing something that you don't want them to do. There's a problem because the weather's not right. The problem is your computer's not fast enough. But even if all that stuff wasn't there, I guarantee if you look at your experience and you're completely honest, if you're in a room by yourself with absolutely nothing going on, you will still make a problem. Because ego exists when you have a problem. Because as soon as you have a problem, you have an identity. And you have an identity that's separate from somebody else. And that's the birth of ego right there. So it's not rocket science. You just have to be really interested. And so, somebody might ask, well, how do you do that? I don't know anything. All you have to do is, like I said, reach out to other people. There's a lot going out. You can, obviously reach out to our project because this is what we're about. But you can also just get very interested in your own experience. And you can follow the longing in your heart. So if you have a longing in your heart that says, I gotta find something different, I'm desperate, this is getting horrible, instead of trying to figure it out in your own mind, you make yourself available to something else. You make yourself available to that longing, and I guarantee that something will come into your life. All of a sudden, a book will fall off a shelf. All of a sudden, you'll start talking to somebody in a cafe, and they're part of a meditation group. Anything can happen, but it's happening all the time. It's like consciousness, God is looking all the time to wake you up. But most of the time we're not even awake enough to be aware of the call to wake up. But if you consciously make yourself awake to it, then all of a sudden you see all of these things that are there just trying to draw your attention so that you can find your way on this path. And if you're watching this video right now, and you're on a channel that's focused on spirituality or something alternative, you already are following the yes that's in your heart, or you wouldn't be on this channel, you wouldn't be watching this video, you would be probably on a computer game somewhere or watching porn or some other thing that's probably not going to wake you up. So you just look in your own experience right now. What is it that brought you to watch this video right now? You see, it's available right now. That connection to who you are is here, right now. And if you follow that, you're watching this video, then you'll probably get inspired afterwards to maybe watch another video, or maybe to find a book, or maybe to reach out to somebody else, or maybe find out who I am and go deeper into that. And I guarantee, just watch your experience, as soon as you start taking the next step, you're going to hear the little voice coming into the back of your head going, oh, no. You don't want to go down this path. This is a spiritual path. People are going to think you're weird. Your parents aren't going to like it. Whatever it happens to be, that little voice is going to start blah, 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 blah. And then you have to, in that moment, you have to decide, where are you going to put your attention? Are you going to put your attention on your heart that's calling you forward? Or are you going to go, oh no, I need to go back to the comfort of my stupid little voice that's talking inside of my head? So I'm sorry if I'm calling the voice in your side of your head stupid, but the longer you go with this, the stupider you'll realize that this voice actually is. So that's really, I could say a lot more, and I'm giving a lot in a short period of time. So this isn't a get quick, it's not you're like, everything's going to happen right here and right now. If you want to actually be a liberated human being, you have got to make the effort to wake up, and you have to make the effort to try to understand how to live this. It's not impossible for someone to have a mind-blowing experience and to be able to live it from that moment on. But those people are few and very, very far between. So until that happens to you, you need to take the next step. You need to follow, you need to follow your own longing. You need to follow your own interest that says, what in the heck is going on here? And, and that's all you can really do, because that path is very different for different people. But the first thing is there's plenty of space for fear, but there's no room for hesitation if you want to be free. And nobody can do it for you.